This is Gemara Baba Basra Daf Kuf Ayin Aleph, and as we literally round in this incredibly long Masechta journey through Baba Basra, which we've mentioned is in reality the conclusion of all the Babas. Baba Kam, Baba Metzia, Baba Basra is really one incredibly long Masechta, very exciting as we see the finish line in sight. B'siyata this Shemayo, we're going to pick it up from the Gemara on Kaf Ayin Amud Beis. Actually, we're going to relearn the Mishnah quickly. And again, we like to dedicate today's shir and the Zchus HaTorah as an incredible Zchus Rafua Shlema for Tinoik, Miriam Ahuva, B'seich Sha'ar Chele Yisrael. So let's continue. Again, we're going to relearn the Mishnah. Mishapara Mixas Chayvai, what is the status of someone who pays back part of a chayv? Rav Yehuda Omer Yachlif, Rav Yossi Omer Yichtav Shayver. So this is the fundamental machlekes. What do you do when part of a shtar was paid up? The Rashbam right away keys us in. This is a classical milva b'shtar. A loan was made, writing it in the document, and there's a concern. Pen yachzor amalva v'yitzvah chayvai. That what? I paid up half. It's a $200 loan. Maybe you're going to come back and say, hey, look, I have a shtar that says you owe me $200. So it says, Rav Yehuda, what do? Yachlif. You exchange the document for a new one. Yikra oisay shtar, says the Rashbam. You rip up the original document. Yichlul oishar acher. And you write a new document. Lefi cheshbon anishar. Mizman rishon, as the Gemara is going to explain. So again, in our case, that's a $200 loan that he paid up $100. What do? You write a new shtar stating that what is owed is $100. But again, the Rashbam already keys us into that which the Gemara is going to teach us, that has to be the original Zman, which we can understand why you need the date to go back to the original date. Whereas Rav Yossi says, no, you write a shayver, and the Rashbam says, Vishmreu alayva. And the borrower, of course, is obligated to watch the shayver, the receipt that he paid. So then if the lender comes over and says, hey, you owe me $200, he could say, what are you talking about? Look, I have a receipt that I paid you. A classical machlekes. Continues the Mishnah. Amar Rav Yehuda. Nim says, says Rav Yehuda, you're creating a scenario that the loiva, the borrower, has to watch his document from the mice. Says Rav Yossi, you're right. But you know what? This is more befitting, that the malvez koyach should not be weakened. If he has to return the document and write a new shtar, then the malvez power is weakened. Now, why that is true, we're going to see in the Gemara. That's really where we left off. We just learned the Mishnah very fast. So says the Gemara, let's move on. So the Mishnah had two opinions. Machlekes Rav Yehuda, Rav Yossi. You exchange for a new document, you write a shayver. Says the Gemara, Rav Huna, Rav, a third opinion. Ein halacha like Rav Yehuda, like Rav Yossi. We don't paskin either. Ella, rather. Bezdin mikarin ashtar. You know what Bezdin does? Bezdin rips up the original shtar. V'koisin lo shtar acher mizman rishon, and writes a new document from the original date on the shtar. So as we hear this, we say, hey, this was very similar to Rabbi Yehuda. So what exactly is the difference? So the Rashbam right away points out, Ein halachic Rav Yehuda, that says that you swap the shtar and you write it for the first time, Al Yedei Eidim Biloi Bezdin, as we're going to explain. Deloy Alima Eidim, to rip up a shtar and to write a new one. Whereas the Chiddush of Rav Huna Marav is that it's a din in Bezdin. Bezdin mikarin ashtar v'kois l'shtar acher. So if we want to hone in on what is the precise detail that Rav Yehuda Marav is, just in the simple words, is differing from Rav Yehuda, it's that he's dealing with the same type of scenario, but it must be done in Bezdin. Says the Gemara, Amar le Rav Nachman le Rav Huna. Rav Nachman says to Rav Huna, Amar le Rav Yirmiyah bar Abba le Rav Huna, 4 lines on the bottom. Ishmile le Rav ha Braisa. Did Rav ever hear the following Braisa, the Tanya, which says, Eidim mekarin tashtar v'kos l'shtar racham is van rishon? Actually, let's read that a little bit better. If Rav, if Rav would have heard the brisa that says that Eidim are able to rip up the shtar and write a new one, Have Hadar Bey, Rav would have been chayzer and he would have said, just like Rav Yehuda. He would not have said, we don't baskin like Rav Yehuda, and rather it must be done in Bezdin. No. If he heard that brisa, he would have allowed it to be done in Bezdin. Says the Gemara, Marley, Rav Huna says, no, guess what? Shmi'alei, Rav heard that brisa, and still, v'lo yadar bey. Why not? Why is Rav, explaining the Gemara, why is Rav at odds with this brisa? This brisa seemingly articulating very clearly that this could be done even without a Bezdin. So explains the Gemara as we turn over to Kufay and Aleph Amud Aleph, that what Bishlama Beitina Ali Malaf Kuyim Emaina. I understand that Bezdin rips up the shtar and writes a new one. Why? Because Bezdin has the power to confiscate, to extract money. Ella, you know what bothered Rav Huna Amar Rav? Well, Rav, as Rav Huna explains, Eidim Shasa Shlichusan, Chayzin V'Aisrin Shlichusan. But Eidim, they did their shlichus when they wrote the first star. Chayzin V'Aisrin Shlichusan. Can they do it again? Eidim don't have such power, says Rav. Eidim are mere shluchim. So how can the Eidim go and rip up the shtar and write a new one? Minasan lohem koyach, says the Rashbam, spells out on the third narrow line. That's why, says Rav Huna, guess what? Rav heard this brisa, and he still argues on Rav Yehuda in the Mishnah. Ask the Gemara, the light on the third line, Kafay and Aleph and Aleph. Is that true? Do Eidim not have such power? V'amar Rav Yehuda Yudam Rav. Eidim kaisen afilu asara shtarais al sadechas. Rav Yehuda Rav said Eidim were able to write 10 documents for one field. And the Rashbam spells out, Misha avad shtarai v'amar le'eidim kais v'liacher. If you lost the shtar, you can rewrite it again. So says the Gemara, guess what? Rav Yosef Amar, that's bishtar matana. Rabba Amar, bishtar shein bayachrayis. Meaning, yes, there would be times that Eidim could rewrite it, but not when we have a shtar explicating a sale or one that has a chrayis, which is the din, like the halva in our Mishnah. And that is the reason why it says Rav Huna, Rav did indeed know this brisa, but he still argues on Rav Yehuda. Continues the Gemara, my brisa. Says the Gemara, we started off today that we had a brisa that spoke out, lo yalacha ki Rav Yehuda, lo yalacha ki Rav Yasi, rather like a third opinion. Says the Gemara, what is that brisa? The Tanya, we learned in our brisa, Hare, 8 lines down, the first line is Hare Risha Noisha B'Elev Zoz. Someone who borrowed, there was alva of 1,000 zoziot, someone who paramin chamesh meyois. He paid up 500 zos, Eidim Mikarnes the shtar, says the brisa. Eidim rip up the shtar, v'kais l'shtar acher. Eidim rip up the shtar and write a new shtar, mizman rishoin divri Rav Yehuda. Says Rav Yehuda clearly, just like he taught in our Mishnah. Eidim rip up the shtar from the first man. Rav Yasi he says, Rav Yasi, no, don't touch the shtar. Leave the shtar b'mekayma and what? V'yichtavu shayva, write a receipt. That's the machlekes Rav Yehuda and Rav Yasi. Umibnei shnei dvarim oimrim kaisrin shayvar. Now the Brisa explains further. There are 2 reasons that we have a din of a shayvar and not to swap the shtar. Achas, number 1. Number 1. That the malveh should have the shtar, that he could pressure the loiveh to pay. Why? Because the loiveh is always going to be nervous. He might lose the shtar. might lose the shiver. Excuse me. If you look at the Rashbam, Kadesh Yaakov Lepairai, Malva is able to force the Leiva to pay. Why? Because the Leiva is always worried that he might lose the shiver, and therefore he wants to pay up quickly. So Chazal B'dafka created such a scenario that we write a shiver, give it to the Leiva as proof. But now he's going to be nervous, and he Lamaisa is going to go and pay up his alva. Reason number one. Reason number two, Vachas Kadei Shigva Mizman Rishain, that he could collect for the first man, which was in the original shtar. But ask the Gemara, the obvious kasha that everyone now is wondering, Rav Yehuda Nami Mizman Rishain Kamar. Rav Yehuda that said you write up a new shtar said Mizman Rishain. Answers the Gemara, Hachi Kamar Le Rav Yesi the Rav Yehuda. This is what Rav Yesi is saying to Rav Yehuda. If you're saying it's from the original Zman, then then I argue on you with one din that I hold that you should write a shiver to give the loiva that nervousness that he's going to pay back. And says Rav Yesi to Rav Yehuda, Mizman Sheni Kamrit, if you're saying that you collect from the second Zman, then because I want him to be able to collect from the original date. And that really concludes part A of today's Shir, which is the Mishnah, the Machlekes Rav Yehuda, Rav Yesi, the third opinion of Rav Yehuda Marav. And within that, we've explained the two reasons, really a reason and a half we could call it, as to why Rav Yesi favors writing a shiver over swapping and rewriting a new shtar. And for there, we continue about 12 lines to the bottom. The first one line is Bitarti, says the Gemara, a machlekes Rav Yehuda and Rav Yesi, which, as classically at the onset will seem to have no shaykhis, but when we eventually get to Amid Beis, whether at the end of today's shir or tomorrow, we'll see how this will tie back to our Mishnah. Says the Gemara, Tanu Rabban, shtar shezmanoi kasav Shabbos. We have a shtar that the date in the shtar is on Shabbos. Basra Tishrei, or the 10th of Tishrei, which of course is Yom Kippur. Shtar me'uchar, this is a post-dated shtar, and therefore it is kosher. The kosher divrei Rav Yehuda. We all could just quickly realize why it's post-dated kosher, because the whole reason you need to have a zman is to allow for collection from the chasim mishubadim. And if someone post-dates the shtar, he weakens his power, because he allows for less collection, not more collection. Therefore, it's going to be kosher. Rav Yesi Paisel. Rav Yesi says no, even in such a post-dated shtar, it's going to be possible, as we will explain. What says Rav Yehuda? I don't understand. There's a story that came in front of you. And you, Rav Yesi, said it is kosher. Responds Rav Yesi, when I said it was kosher, it was only in that precise case. Again, we have to get to what is that precise case? Says the Rashbam, is a b'davka if it was in the bottom of the Amid, davka if it was Shabbos Yom Kippur. Asks the Gemara, 1 second. But Rav Yehuda Nami Bazek Amar, but that's dafka where Rav Yehuda was also talking about. So what's going on over here? If Rav Yehuda is responding that you were Mekel, then it's the same case. So Amar Rapidas, I call Maid, everyone's maskim. Shehem Uzaknu, says Rapidas. I call Maidim that what? Shehem who's kaknu lo'inaisa shel shtar, that if we calculate the date of the shtar v'nimsas and we find out oinasai mechuvanais b'Shabbos oibasar b'Tishrei, we find out that the date falls out on Shabbos or the 10th of Tishrei, everyone agrees, Rav Yehuda, Rav Yesi, sheshtar me'ocho v'kosher, that is not the machlekes. And with that, we turn over to Kufay and Aleph Amid Beis and continues the Gemara. So, what indeed is the machlekes Rav Yehuda and Rav Yesi? Loi nechliku, they do not argue. Ela b'shtar me'ucher be'alma. A regular shtar me'ucher, not on Shabbos, not on Tisha B'Av. How do we deal with a post-dated shtar, but one in which the shtar itself does not scream and tell of its post-datedness? We don't write a receipt. Therefore, we can never have a problem, because in the event that there's going to be a partial payment, what's going to happen? It's going to be ripped up, and you'll have a new shtar. So the original star will always be there to prove what's going on. But Rav Yosi, the reason why he says it's possible is that Taimei Damar Kaisvin Shaivar, and therefore what? 4 lines down, V'nafkemi Chorba, and therefore we could have a serious problem that comes out of this story. Nafkemi Chorba, as the Rashbam says, Convarsh V'azal, we're going to get to it in a moment. What is the potential disaster? Continues the Gemara. We're going to circle back around in a moment. But says Rav Huna B'Rei Rav Yeshua, when we say Kaisen Shaivar, even that opinion, again, Rav Yosi, that is only Hanimili Apalga. That is only if part of the loan was paid. Avalakule. But if the whole loan is paid, even Rav Yosi's maskim, we do not write a shaivar. Of course, rather, what do? The original document is going to be returned, ripped up, etc. Says the Gemara of Eloi, it's not true. Afilu akule kasvinan. Even on a whole payment of a star, we write a receipt. Where do we see this? As Rav Yitzchak Rav Yosi had a loan against Rav Abba, Rav Chanina bar Papi, Amrle Havali Zuzi pay me, Amrle Havali star, give me the star, V'shakal Zuzach, and then I'll pay you. Amrle star Erchasle, I lost the star. Echtav L'cha Tavra. I lost the star, but guess what? I'll write for you a receipt. Amrle says Rav Abba, Rav Shmuel, Darmut Tarvayu, ain't goes in Shaifer. Rav and Shmuel say that we don't write a shayfer. Says the Gemara, Man di Yahiv, Man Yahiv Afra. Excuse me. So Amar, so Chanina Mar Papi responds, Man Yahiv Lan Me Afra to Rav Shmuel. What a statement! Who will give us the dust of Rav Shmuel? That what? That Ramina and Beinayin that we can put in our eyes. Rachlina Bar Papi is about to argue on Rav and Shmuel. And therefore, he says something nice about them, and then he argues. Says Rav Chelina Bar Papi, Rav Yechon Rav Yishlakish Tarmi Tarvayu, on the second white line, Kais Vin Shiver, that we would write a Shiver. Thank you also, Rav Number Rav like Kais Vin Shiver. Do you write a Shiver? So says the Gemara, we just finished saying you only write a Shiver when part of a star is paid up, but we see klar that yes, Rav and Shmuel were against this practice of writing a Shiver and one doesn't have the star. But what do we see? We see Rav Yechon, Reish Lakish, Rav Namar, Rav Elam. They're all sharing the sentiment that we would write a shiver. Continues the Gemara, not only that, Umistavra, and logically the guys in shiver. Why? These are guys in shiver. Avid shar shalzeh yoichla Allah. The chadi that what if someone goes and loses his star, the borrower should go and eat the money and rejoice that he doesn't have to pay his debt. And the Rashbam spells out, can it be that, well, you're going to have a matziv, that if someone loses his star, he's never going to be able to collect? So says the Gemara, indeed, we are kaisin shiver, even on a whole document. Asks the Gemara, so what do you want to prove that you do indeed write a shiver? It says, Abaye, 1 second. Ovid shiver shalzeh. And let's say he now loses his shiver. I'll ask you the question back at you. The other guy should go and eat and he'll rejoice. The same exact kasha, meaning misvara, just like you're creating a matziv. The star is lost. What if the shiver is lost? Amrle Rava says, no, that doesn't bother me. Yes, it's true. If the loiva loses the shiver, yes, he's going to be in a bad place. A borrower, a borrower is considered a servant to the lender, and it's true that yes, the loiva will be in a compromised situation, but that's because he is the borrower, but we would indeed write a shiver even on part of a document. Truth is, even though we are a little bit high in the Amud because we started with a full chazar of the previous Mishnah, we'll stop over here as this is now going to get back to Shtar Me'ucha, Shtar Muktam, and we'll pick it up from here, B'siyata Dishmai.